Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this edition of The Comeback Kid. I am your host, Ben Friedel, and alongside me today are Nate Wiggins and Matt Hendrickson, as always. What's going on, you guys? How you doing?
I've been better.
Yeah, it's been that kind of week as a American sports fan, that's for sure. What about you, Matt? How you doing?
I'm doing better than Nate. I'll tell you that. I've been doing some yoga, and I'm starting to feel loose, pretty rested. What about you, Ben?
You know, I'm doing good. It was an exciting week of playoff baseball, and but of course the inevitable did happen. So I think we're just gonna have to jump right into it. So, but before we do that, what is this show about, guys? What is this show about? So basically, every single Monday at 9 a.m., we hope to talk about sports and stories that may not get enough attention on major sports networks. This includes baseball, NHL, and as of last week, MLS. But and Nate and I have been discussing this at length. That may not be a continuing theme, at least in the interim, because some sour feelings after last Tuesday sort of developed within me. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. So, most importantly, we on this show want to talk about the sports that we want to talk about, and hope that we can both inform and inspire the listener at home. So, I've been alluding to it for the first couple minutes here. Last Tuesday was a sad day in America. The U.S. men's national soccer team failed to qualify for the World Cup for the first time since 1986. I have no words, really. I mean, we set aside 20 minutes to talk about it, so I will have words at some point. But, Nate, you went down to O'Brien's Pub. You were there with the San Diego American Outlaws faithful. There were some soccer celebrities there as well, if I am correct with that. And you got to see the hopes and dreams of a nation dashed before your eyes, live and in person. How are you feeling? How are you feeling, man?
Pissed, embarrassed. Yeah, I was at the pub, and like you said, two American soccer legends were there. I got a chance to meet Eric Winalda, former U.S. men's national team player, scored 34 goals for the national team, and scored the first goal in MLS history. And Paul Caligiuri, who in 1989 scored the goal in Trinidad and Tobago that sent the United States to the World Cup, their first World Cup since 1950. But just getting to the match, I mean, just what a terrible performance. Like, it was all set up for the United States. All they had to do was go down to Trinidad and Tobago and just draw. Like, they didn't even need to win. They needed to draw against the worst team in the group, a team that had lost 9 straight qualifiers, had absolutely nothing to play for, and they looked so terrible. Like, Trinidad and Tobago had nothing to play for. The USA had everything to play for. But if you watch that match, it looked like Trinidad and Tobago was a team that was playing to go to the World Cup. Mm-hmm. Like, it was just mind-boggling to me how these guys can come out and be so lethargic. Like, Anyway, getting to the match. Before the match, the tactics from Bruce Arena were just, I don't know what he was thinking, coming out with the exact same lineup, in the exact same formation as he played Friday in Panama. Like, I don't understand the thinking behind that. You come out, you know the pitch is going to be, it's going to be a wetter pitch, so why is Darlington Nagbe, whose speed is he's better to play on a faster pitch, why is Darlington Nagbe starting? Why don't you have Alejandro Bedoya out wide? Why is Michael Bradley by himself in the middle? And once you saw Michael Bradley struggling in the middle by himself, why didn't you bring in Kellen Acosta or Dax McCarty? I don't understand what Bruce Arena was thinking. Like, is he watching the match? Like, what is going on in Bruce Arena's mind? I don't get it. I don't understand why they came out in the same formation when against Trinidad and Tobago, you know that the way to beat them is you need to pack the midfield. So why are you coming out with four men in the back and just Michael Bradley by himself in that defensive midfielder role? Why aren't you coming in with 3 at the back and 5 midfielders? I don't understand. Like, honestly, I felt like I could have managed the team better than Bruce Arena did on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. It was just terrible.
Yeah, it was really bad, and we were talking at length earlier about this when we were prepping for the show. You mentioned to me that you're feeling a little. I want to say, I guess, sad for some of the veterans on this national team. People like Omar Gonzalez, Tim Howard, because that could have been their last. Correct me if I'm wrong. Competitive national team match.
Yeah. This is probably that was definitely the last meaningful match for Omar Gonzalez, for Clint Dempsey, for Tim Howard, and it's really a shame that Tim Howard. How are we going to remember him? Are we going to remember him for the 16 saves against Belgium, or are we going to remember him for letting in 2 goals that he should have saved against Trinidad and Tobago? Yep. How are we going to remember Omar Gonzalez as one of the best defenders in U.S. men's national team history, or for that own goal against the U.S. in Trinidad and Tobago? How are we going to remember Josie Altidore? He could go down as the number 1 goal scorer in U.S. men's national team history, but people are going to remember him for A, always getting injured at the World Cup, and B, in this match against Trinidad and Tobago, when he lost the ball in the midfield, he was just walking back. Like, he wasn't even hustling. It looked like he didn't even care. And I'm like, come on, Josie. I listened to an interview at the beginning of the World Cup qualifying cycle way back in 2016 about how Josie Altidore was saying, man, I'm really excited for this qualifying cycle because of the fact that he was injured in 2014. So if it really meant this much to Josie Altidore to get back to the World Cup, it didn't look like it on Tuesday. And not only for some of the veterans am I feeling bad, but some of these younger guys who could put a slow down their careers, because there are players that use the World Cup as a launching pad. DeAndre Yedlin used the World Cup in 2014 as a launching pad to go from Seattle to Tottenham and then on to Sunderland and Newcastle. This was going to be I thought okay, Christian Pulisic, if he has a good season with Dortmund and then goes on to have a very good World Cup, he could end up leaving Dortmund during the summer. But now we have to wait until 2022 for Christian Pulisic to play in a World Cup. It is just so unbelievably sad. It is just, man. And then also another guy I was feeling bad for was Dax McCarty, because he's been one of the better players in MLS over these past couple of years, and this was his chance to finally play at a World Cup, and now he's not going to get a chance to do it because by the time 2022 rolls around, he's going to be too old. So it's really a shame. But I mean, these guys, they had it. The opportunity was there, and they couldn't get the job done.
They really couldn't. And then this is a systemic problem. Really shows how weak our soccer system is, and I think that we've been fooling ourselves for the past 2-3 some odd years, where soccer has really been booming in this country, and we've been creating an illusion for ourselves that we're better than we are. And this problem starts from the top down. You were mentioning to me that the U.S. operates our soccer development and system way different than other countries do. Can you explain a little bit of that to our listeners?
Yeah, so here in the U.S. we have the system is called pay to play, and I mean what it is in order to play soccer, in order to get into these development academies, and in order to get pretty much into the U.S. soccer system, or to get a coaching license, it's expensive. And the reality is that we are the only nation where it's like that. In other countries, it doesn't matter. Your socioeconomic status doesn't matter when it comes to, if you're good enough, they will find a way to get you into these development academies. They will find a way to get you into the player pool for the national team. They will find a way. But here in the United States, it's, you may be the most talented player in your city, but if you don't have the money, oh, well, sorry, too bad. And that overwhelmingly shuts out Black and Latino players who, they may be the best players. They may be the best players in their neighborhoods. They may be the best players in the city. They may be the best players in their county, but they're shut out from the U.S. soccer system because they don't have the resources to play. And it's until the United States gets rid of this pay-to-play system, we're going to be miles behind the rest of the world. Miles behind. And, there's, Bruce Arena was resigned a couple days after the match. I thought he should have resigned immediately after the match.
In the post-match interview, just right there, yeah.
In pretty much any other country, if something like this happened, the manager would have resigned right there. I believe the manager for England, don't quote me on this, but I believe after they lost to Iceland, he resigned on the spot. I might be misremembering, but I'm pretty sure he did. So Bruce Arena resigned. I think it was 3 days later. Didn't really come as a surprise to anybody, but to me, the bigger problem is Sunil Gulati, who's the president of the U.S. Soccer Federation, and I mean, he's done some great things for soccer in this country, but I think the time has come where he needs to go. Gulati out, get him out of here. But he took a conference call last Friday, and he said, "I take full responsibility for this, but I'm not going to resign, and I'm planning on running for re-election." How could you take full responsibility for something, but then not resign? I don't get it. Like, to me, I feel like Gulati thinks that, like, oh, I'm the reason that soccer is so popular in this country, you know, and he has this just inflated opinion of himself that's so far removed from reality. Like, it is ridiculous.
It really is, and my perspective on this whole thing, what the heck are we doing? Oh my gosh, like, I didn't even watch this match. Because, for one, I had class. And two, I just assumed that everything was going to be fine. And I think that everyone else really just assumed that it would be okay. There was a 94% chance to qualify into the main draw before Tuesday's match. And at least making it to, like, a playoff. So, like, if we drew that game was an even greater percentage. And it's missing out was just unprecedented. It was on, I don't think it was on any of our minds that it could have gone the way that it did, because this result was also determinant on results going on in other countries simultaneously. The match in Mexico, it had to go a certain way, or else, you know, that had to go perfectly, and the dominoes just had to fall just right. But regardless of that, we shouldn't have even been in this position to begin with. A nation the size of the United States is not going to the World Cup, and you have countries like Panama and Honduras who are now either straight into the World Cup or at least in a playoff. We couldn't even do that. Players from Panama and Honduras only dream to come play in the MLS in the United States for higher wages, better life, and they showed so much more heart than we ever did during this whole entire qualifying. And last week, all three of us sat here on this show, and I think, like many Americans across the nation who were predicting what would happen on Tuesday, we thought, this is it. We're playing the worst team in the Hex, and we have this. Our ticket to the World Cup is punched, and we predicted that the U.S. would go in. All three of us will, you know, acknowledgingly raise our hands saying we got it wrong. But, like, who could blame us? Who could have predicted that this kind of thing would happen?
I mean, 300 million people in the United States, and we can't put together a winning group of 11. I think that says a lot. But it seems like what we have in U.S. soccer is a difference in what we expect versus what we can actually produce. As American fans, we expect our team to qualify. But maybe that speaks a little bit to our arrogance and how we might be setting lofty goals for a national team whose domestic league, the MLS, is only 20 years old. And arguably, we cannot produce a contending national team by itself from MLS. So 95% odds, 94% odds, hoo-ha odds of qualifying aside, should we really expect to qualify in the World Cup when most representatives for other nations are coming out of various European or South American leagues?
So like I mentioned prior, or like we mentioned prior, there's many systematic problems going on. Bruce Arena was a huge problem. Sunil Gulati was and still remains a huge problem. But my personal opinion, and Nate has choice opinions in opposition to my own about this, was that former United States national team head coach Jurgen Klinsmann, he was a terrible coach. He really was. He didn't really do much for us, but I do think that he did get one thing right, and that is his opinions about Major League Soccer at this point in time. I think we, as Americans, have been fooling ourselves into believing that MLS could develop and maintain U.S. national team talent. And I hope that one day it's able, Nate, I see you over there. You're fuming, man. You're fuming. I hope that one day, and I predict that one day, MLS will be one of the top leagues in the world because of the direction that it's going. It's growing fast. It is becoming a more and more exciting league to watch because the level of play is growing more than ever. But when every 4 years your immediate goal is to get a team into the World Cup, you need to bring the best of the best. In my opinion, you can't be bringing players who are playing in a league which is competitive, but a league that isn't as competitive as many in Europe, such as, England and France and Spain. The leagues overseas have a different level of competition and mentality, I believe. And the MLS has its whole reputation of being a retirement league. That's why, and we saw Kaká retire last night, and let's face it, for the past year he hasn't been a serviceable forward for Orlando City, and that's just a testament to some of the stuff that goes on in MLS. It's just they're giving these washed up players a platform to just ride off into the sunset, and then we have our actual United States men's national team players playing against this kind of competition, and it doesn't make sense to me why we aren't prioritizing young players such as Emerson Hindman in England, such as Lyndon Gooch in England, who are these young players who are getting, really amazing competition overseas and not giving them a chance in the team and taking preference over these players who play domestically. All right, Nate, come at me. Go for it.
So I have a question for you. So when MLS players who play for the U.S. men's national team, when they play well, is that like when Josie Altidore plays well, when Michael Bradley play well, is that a testament to their experience in Europe? Like, are they playing well because of their experience in Europe, or like what's the reason for that? I'm going to ask you that.
I believe that they wouldn't be where they are today without their experience in Europe.
See, I agree with you there, but here's where I think you're wrong, Ben. The goal of MLS's goal is not to develop players. Their goal is not to develop players for the U.S. men's national team. Because if that was the goal, then there would be no need to go out and sign these big time DPs. They're designated players. There wouldn't be no need to go out and sign a David Villa or a Kaká, because you could just be, okay, let's just develop a young American into not the next David Villa or the next Kaká, but let's just develop a young American to be to be the number one player on our team. But see, that's not the goal of MLS. The goal of an MLS team is to win an MLS Cup. The goal is not let's develop American players. Right?
So where do the players develop then? Because if they're developing overseas and their goal is not to develop here, why would they come back?
Well, I'm not saying that their goal I'm not saying that that's not a goal of MLS. What I'm saying is that that's not the number one goal of MLS. That the goal, it's not. All right, so hold on. These are the top 10 players. The top 10 players from MLS. The top 10 players of MLS this year: Sebastian Giovinco, David Villa, Albert Rusnak, Miguel Almiron, Clint Dempsey, João Plata, Roman Alessandrini, Lee Nguyen, Diego Valeri, and Victor Vasquez. Those are the top 10 MLS players this year. 2 of those guys are Americans, and only one of them is actually in the player pool, Clint Dempsey. If the goal of MLS was to develop American players, then we would see that all the best players in MLS would be American. But the reality is that's not the case. These teams aren't here to develop American players. These teams are here to win. That's why Toronto FC goes out and signs Giovinco, because they're like, hey, here's our opportunity to win. So I see what you're saying, that, and I'm not here to say that MLS is on the same level as the Premier League or the leagues in Europe. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that it's important. I'm saying is that MLS is not the reason why the U.S. failed to qualify for the World Cup. They're not the reason why.
So obviously this discussion is getting nowhere. So we're just gonna wrap it up here. It's not like we don't have 4.5 years to talk about this. So
yeah, I believe you're right, Matt. We may disagree sometimes, but Nate, I respect you, and I sadly look forward to having this conversation over the next 4.5 years, because that's the next time we're going to see the United States play in a World Cup match. So when we come back, let's talk. It was a busy week in baseball. The playoffs are underway. It's been a dismal MLB playoffs for teams entering as favorites and a year for resurging teams. So stick around and we'll be right back to talk all about it. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Comeback Kid, everyone. When we last left you, we were discussing the fatal conclusion of the United States national team's hopes and dreams regarding qualifying the World Cup in Russia for 2018. Those dreams are dashed, but the dreams of 4 Major League Baseball teams are still alive and well. Yes, Major League Baseball playoffs are underway. Over this past week, we saw the conclusion of the division series. We saw teams such as the Astros, the Yankees, the Cubs, and the Los Angeles Dodgers all advancing to the division to the League Championship Series in both the AL and the NL respectively. And when looking back on the division series, guys, most notably 2 storylines stood out to me. The Cleveland Indians were up 2-0 against the Yankees, similarly to how they were 3-1 up against the Chicago Cubs last year in the World Series. And they lost that series to the Yankees 3-2. They completely and utterly fell apart. And partially it has to do with a very strong Yankees team who produced very great starting pitching in the form of Masahiro Tanaka, Sonny Gray, Luis Severino, and others. But on top of the Indians, how about those Washington Nationals? Matt, your boy Bryce Harper really he couldn't carry his team to the promised land once again. And if we look back at the Nationals' postseason recent history, spanning back from 2012. In 2012, they lost in the League Division Series 3-2. 2013, they missed the playoffs entirely. 2014, lost again in the League Division Series 3-1. 2015, they missed the playoffs. In 2016 and this year, also lost in the League Division Series. They cannot advance past the first round, and many picked this team and believe this team on paper had the best, most balanced roster in terms of offensive production, pitching, everything. So this poses the question for the Nationals: where does this problem stem from? Because this is turning into a real issue where they just cannot get over the hill with the millions and millions of dollars that they're spending every single year.
Honestly, I think this is a DC sports problem. And I say that half jokingly because for some reason, these DC teams, they just can't seem to get. They're always good enough to get. Well, not the football team, but most of the other teams are good enough to get there. But then they can't move on to the next round. So clearly, there's something in the water or something in the air in DC because that city is cursed.
Ben, I must stand to correct you. Bryce Harper is not my boy. But I was one of those many people who thought that they had all the tools to go all the way this year, especially this year. I think there's really no excuses for what's going on there. I think we're just starting to see that there are certain teams that, regardless of what they do, they just can't win in the playoffs. And I think there is some kind of curse or something is building, and not only Washington, but Los Angeles. You think about the Clippers, you think about the Kings not even making the playoffs anymore, and how dare I say this, but you think about the Ducks in the greater Los Angeles area, which pains me to say, but we talk about that and how they sometimes can't even do it, and sometimes being all the time. But one team I would like to stick out is so far in this championship series, the Dodgers have looked very impressive.
They have, and the Dodgers, interestingly enough, are up 2-0 against the Chicago Cubs, a team that beat the Washington Nationals in the division series. And kind of shifting it back to the Nationals, we'll get to the LCS in a second. The Nationals were up against a weaker Cubs team. It was believed going into the playoffs that this Cubs team was arguably the weakest team out of any team, including wildcard teams, maybe with the exception of the Minnesota Twins, to be in this year's playoffs. And this year, their experience from last year, fighting back against the Cleveland Indians, I believe, really showed their tenacity and how they're able to take it. Although the regular season may not have gone exactly as planned, they won an NL Central that was pretty weak this year, but they were able to bring their play to another level. And these first 2 games against the Dodgers, although they have lost them, have both been extremely tight games. And they've been in each game every second of the way. So as much as it pains me to say it, I do want to shout out the Cubs for how they've played so far this postseason, because they've surprised me in their title defense, because I presumed that going up against the likes of Steven Strasburg, Max Scherzer, Gio Gonzalez in that first series, and with where the Cubs pitching staff is at, you had Kyle Hendricks game 1, who isn't your prototypical ace. You had Jose Quintana, who had an ERA higher than 4 this year, kind of going in game 2. Like, you would assume that the Nationals would have the upper hand there, but it was the Cubs that advanced on, and yeah, so that leaves the Dodgers and the Cubs in the league championship series. But on the other side, in the American League, we had the Red Sox fizzle out of the playoffs, maybe the least competitive division series we saw across the board. The Astros really took it to your Red Sox, Nate, and your boy, John Farrell, your most beloved Red Sox manager of all time, he got sacked. He finally got, to use British soccer terms, he got sacked. And where did the Red Sox go from here, Nate? How are you feeling?
Well, I think you and I talked about this on Friday, but you said that you were surprised to see the Red Sox fire John Farrell. I was not surprised at all. I was actually more surprised. Like, at the end of 2016, a lot of people thought he was going to get fired after they bombed out in the division series against Cleveland. He didn't, because Dave Dombrowski said, well, in-game managing is not really that big of a deal for me. What matters to me is, like, can he get the most out of his guys, and, what's the vibe in the clubhouse. And the reality is that in 2017, John Farrell did not get the most out of his guys, because you look at disappointing years from Mookie Betts, Jackie Bradley Jr., Hanley Ramirez, Xander Bogaerts, pretty much disappointing years all around. And you look at he had, from what I heard, had lost the clubhouse, because at the beginning of the season, it was actually came out that John Farrell was having an affair with a clubhouse reporter, and rumor is that a lot of the guys lost respect for him after that, because John Farrell is married. And the other thing is that he wasn't Dave Dombrowski's guy. When Dave Dombrowski came in and took the job in 2015, in about August of 2015, like, John Farrell was already the manager. So it wasn't like Dave Dombrowski really had any attachment to this guy. He was like, oh, he was just already here, when I got here. And well, yeah, they came in last place in 2015, but it was like, hey, we'll give him another chance in 2016. And he was the first manager in Red Sox history to win back-to-back division titles. But the reality is that you can't just be good enough to get there. You have to be good enough to actually, like, win a World Series, and that was something that John Farrell couldn't do. Yeah, he did in 2013, but that was like a special year. Like, anybody could have, the three of us could have managed that team to a World Series.
I mean, you don't get Chris Sale, you don't get Craig Kimbrell to win division series. You get them to win the World Series, and yeah, maybe that 2013 World Series might have been enough to save John Farrell and to get another look this year. But the truth of the matter is 2 weeks ago, when we started talking about these playoffs, we already predicted, hey, Red Sox aren't even going to have a lead against the Astros. So if we knew it and we so adamantly stood behind it, I got to imagine a lot of people felt the same way. So why did this happen so late in a Boston sports market that frankly doesn't have a lot of patience?
Yeah, he wasn't very popular with the fans in Boston. Listening to Boston sports talk radio, they really don't like him. Part of it is just because he's frankly not a very good in-game manager. Like, he'll make decisions that I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, he'll either go too long with a starting pitcher, or he'll bring in the wrong guy out of the bullpen, and it's like, John, like, what are you doing? Like, it's so looking forward, if you ask me who I want as manager, I would like Alex Cora. I've seen Brad Ausmus's name thrown out there. I don't know why they would want Brad Ausmus. I've seen Ron Gardenhire's name. I didn't even know that dude was still alive. Like, I thought he was dead, but I don't want either one of those guys. Give me Alex Cora. He played in Boston. He has experience. He's great bench coach for the Astros. Give me Alex Cora.
Could we possibly see a Bobby Valentine reunion?
We apologize for that. Those of you who are listening at home, Nate, we'll let you calm down a little bit. You need to, goodness gracious, man, just pull your life together. Wow. So you could probably answer this question, Matt. So Nate mentioned that John Farrell lost the clubhouse similarly to Bobby Valentine. Just lost the Red Sox players and their respect, and you know there was reason for that. But I think, and the same thing happened with Terry Francona as well, who's arguably been the greatest manager in the history of the entire organization and continues to do great things in Cleveland. Do you think that this problem is much less about the manager with this disconnect and more about the players in the Red Sox clubhouse?
I'm not really sure about that, to be honest. I think you can bring in a lot of talent, but to get talent to play together, you need a manager. And similar to our soccer situation, I think it starts higher up than any one player. When you look at the championship pedigree, recent albeit, that Chicago's had, a lot of that you can attest to Joe Maddon. And what he does, he's a very quirky manager. He keeps his players relaxed when they need to be, and doesn't like to change things, or he likes to change things too much, putting John Lester in left field. I don't know what he was thinking, but you know what? Who cares? They won the World Series. I think that's just a prime example of leadership done right, and I think Boston has all the tools that they need to do that. It's just has to be the manager.
Yeah, I don't think this is like a systemic issue with the Red Sox, and the reason for that is that you named those three different managers, but with those three managers, there was a different pool of players. The only consistent guy over those three spells was Dustin Pedroia. I mean, I guess you could include Ortiz. He retired last year, but that's two guys. You know, it's a different group of guys, and the reality is that particularly with the young players, John Farrell was not a good communicator. At the end of 2015, when John Farrell had to step away from managing because of cancer, Troy Lovullo, the current manager for the Diamondbacks, was the bench coach for the Red Sox. He steps into the manager's role, and because he was a much better communicator, he was able to get the most out of players like Jackie Bradley Jr., Mookie Betts, who had struggled a little bit in 2015, but by the end of 2015, I mean the Red Sox played their best baseball at the end of 2015 when John Farrell wasn't there. So I think there's got to be some sort of correlation there.
Yeah, and I think the consistency in the manager position, or lack of, in Boston's case, probably is also a big hit. When I think of consistency in one clubhouse, I have to think Mike Sosa. Maybe we need a change. I think we definitely do. He's entering the last year in his contract, so we'll see what Sosa does this year. Hopefully he's inspired to do more so he gets an extension, but I don't know if the Angels would be willing to offer that.
Well, if I know both of these teams have zero correlation to one another, but if Arsenal is willing to offer Arsene Wenger a 2-year extension after the crap that they've put Arsenal fans through, it doesn't surprise me that owner/general manager Artie Moreno would do exactly the same thing with Mike Sosa. Anyways, moving on, getting a little bit back on track here. So we were talking about it earlier briefly. The league championship series have started, and we're pretty much halfway through the series, presumably right now. We have the Dodgers, as we mentioned, who are playing the Cubs and are up 2-0 against the Cubs. Both of those games were in Los Angeles, and both of those games were big, tense wins for the Dodgers. We saw last night Justin Turner hitting a walk-off 3-run home run off of Angels great John Lackey in the 9th inning, sending Chavez Ravine into a frenzy. It was a very exciting moment, and it's what those kind of moments are why we watch playoff baseball. It was genuine, it was clutch, and it was what put the Dodgers in a driving seat in this series, and it will be interesting looking forward to see if they kind of take a step back and start to abide by the scripts that the Indians and Nationals have been writing for themselves over the past few years of getting these out to these confident leads in series, and the pressure will become too much for them potentially, and playing a team like the Cubs, who have the experience of winning the World Series last year, coming from behind to beat the Cleveland Indians, it's going to be interesting to see if the Cubs can repeat the same kind of feat that they did last year.
So, Matt, earlier you said that you think Joe Madden is one of the better managers in the game. I think he is one of the most overrated managers in the game. Last year during the World Series, Terry Francona managed circles around him, and the reason why Joe Madden won is because the reason why the Cubs and Joe Madden won is because the Cubs were a more talented team. This year, I don't know what Joe Madden's thinking, putting John Lackey in the game instead of his closer Wade Davis. And they asked him, why wasn't Wade Davis in the game? And he said, "Oh, because I needed Wade Davis for the save." The game is tied. What do you mean you need him for the save? The game is tied. Why you win or lose with your best? So why wasn't Wade Davis in the game? I don't understand. And I think Joe Madden is one of the most overrated managers in baseball.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of Buck Showalter a few years ago. The Orioles playing against the Toronto Blue Jays, and instead of bringing in arguably who should have won the Cy Young that year, Zach Britton, into the game, one of the most dominant closers currently, he brought in Ubaldo Jimenez in a tie game in order to keep their season alive, for presumably similar reasons of, I'm saving Zach Britton to get the save. And so yeah, Nate, I would agree with you there that Joe Madden, he is quirky, and I think that his managing style can inspire players and bring them to a level that they never thought possible, especially how he uses a lot of his players in a multi-positional aspect. However, sometimes I think it can be too much, bringing in a guy like John Lackey, who's only started games all year, and bringing him into the most high-leverage situation in a league championship series, which, as you progress in the playoffs in baseball, every moment gets that much more tense and that much more important. And, he made a mistake, and the Dodgers and Justin Turner made him pay.
Yeah, Ginger Jesus has been raking to start this series. I don't know what Madden was thinking, but maybe he's just confident enough to think that maybe we don't need Davis every night, and that he's trying to save him for something else. I don't know. I'm trying to get in his head. I definitely thought a lot of the same things. But maybe this is something, a bit of a trend that we're seeing, and putting people who are starters who've never come out of the pen, they come out and then they get shelled immediately. Justin Verlander did the exact same thing to Andrew Benintendi. It just didn't win, but no.
All right, moving on. So, on the other side in the American League, we have the Astros and the Yankees. The Astros have gotten off to a strong 2-0 start against the Yankees. And what we've seen in both series is strong starting pitching that we really didn't see all of the division series. In the Astros case, in Game 2, Justin Verlander threw a complete game with 13 strikeouts. That is why you go get a guy like Justin Verlander. He was phenomenal. That was not even arguably the best game he has ever pitched in his illustrious career. A guy who has not only a Cy Young, but an MVP in his award cabinet, and that kind of dominance against a team with an offense like the New York Yankees in a hitter's ballpark like Houston has convinced me to jump on the Astros bandwagon, because all the teams I wanted are currently out, and I would love to see them go on and, presumably beat either the Dodgers or the Cubs in the World Series.
Verlander is my way too early pick for the playoff MVP. I mean, he has meant so much to this Astros organization after not even really being there that long. I mean, he's, I'm assuming, one of the August 31st waiver pickups. And someone who's always been used to one clubhouse throughout his entire career. Wasn't sure if he wanted to leave Detroit. And I know they were originally trying to make this deal at the deadline, and he, in a sense, vetoed it. And, in fact, he tweeted minutes before the deadline was over a photo of him in the clubhouse saying, "Still here." I mean, the reluctancy is now turning into a playoff push, where I think they are definitely the favorites to win the World Series this year.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned change of scenery, and I think that's exactly what Justin Verlander needed. Past couple years have been up and down, to say the least, for Justin Verlander, as he posted an ERA before he moved to Houston around like 4.5. He was really not the usual dominant ace that we have expected him to be over the past 2 to 3 seasons almost. And one could argue he should have won the Cy Young over your boy Rick Porcello, Nate. But what a move for the Astros, and it's going to be interesting to see if the Yankees offense can break through the strong starting pitching that the Astros have put forward. They haven't been slacking either in their playoff push with their pitching. Masahiro Tanaka went toe-to-toe with Dallas Keuchel in Game 1 and really gave the Yankees all he could. And the Yankees honestly haven't put many feet wrong in this series. It's just been the Astros getting clutch hits when they needed to out of Carlos Correa, clutch defensive plays from Jose Altuve, and when you have an up-the-middle combination such as Altuve and Correa, you're primed for success at any level, and they're a fun team to watch. I hope for the city of Houston, after everything they've been through with Hurricane Harvey, that Justin Verlander, Carlos Correa, Jose Altuve can bring a championship to the city of Houston. So let's talk some hockey, Matt. Let's talk some hockey. It's been around a week and a half of hockey so far this season. Some surprising storylines, such as the Las Vegas Golden Knights have really written a movie-like script for themselves. So we'll recap what has been going on in hockey, and we will be right back.
My baby don't mess around because she loves me so, and this I know for sure. You think you got it, oh, you think you got it, but got it, just don't get it, 'cause there's nothing at all.
Welcome back to the Comeback Kid, everyone. When we last left you, we were discussing the MLB playoffs and how exciting that's been. Now we move on to hockey. It's been an exciting and quite unpredictable first couple weeks of the NHL season so far, right, Matt? And you may have noticed that some of the songs we've been playing in this show have been from the, might I say, immaculate year of 2004. And Matt, that got us thinking, what else happened in 2004?
So, staying within the realm of hockey, the Ducks had this amazing streak against the Calgary Flames, where they had not lost at home to the Flames since 2004. The last time the Flames won a regular season game in Honda Center was January 19th, 2004. In 2004, we didn't have a Honda Center. We had the Arrowhead Pond. And that's a name that a lot of people still like to use. We say, hey, we're going to the pond. So, just to see how many things have changed, I thought, why don't I just, belt off some other things that happened in the year 2004. In the year 2004, Bush was president. In the year 2004, a 19-year-old Michael Phelps won 6 gold medals at the Olympic Games in Athens.
In the year 2004, the Red Sox broke the 86-year curse of the Bambino.
In the year 2004, the Steve Bartman catch from hell was a fresh wound in the minds of Cubs fans. In the year 2004, thefacebook.com was launched out of Harvard University student Mark Zuckerberg's dorm. And on a somber note, in the year 2004, former President Ronald Reagan died. Let's be somber, folks. In the year 2004, the war in Iraq had just begun. In the year 2004...
You got deep all of a sudden. I didn't know you were going this way, Matt.
It's not like it's on an outline here.
Yeah.
In the year 2004, Texas native Lance Armstrong won his 6th consecutive Tour de France. It was outstanding at the time, but now it's kind of In the year 2004, Janet Jackson's breast was briefly exposed by teen heartthrob Justin Timberlake. In the year 2004, we remember the 60th anniversary of D-Day, and perhaps the greatest, most important piece of American history.
But most importantly, in the year 2004, Hey Ya by Outkast was the #1 song on the Billboard Top 100.
All right, everyone. So I'd say that we've gotten a little bit off topic here with saying what's going on in 2004. So let's talk some hockey, Matt. What catches your eye about what's happened so far this hockey season?
I agree. Let's go from what's happening in 2004 to what's happening in 2017. Well, there is a plethora of early hockey newslines. A lot of surprises, a lot of not so much surprises. I'll stick with the surprises. So, I have to mention the hot start from the Vegas Golden Knights. I always thought, with the way the expansion draft was structured, that in a salary cap era, that they had a better chance than most expansion teams to compete right out of the gate. And I was right. I'm not afraid to admit that I was right.
Oh, yes. Humble.
If I'm not the most humble person I know, then I don't know what it means to be humble. It's kind of a dig at Nate. So, what I did not know is that Vegas was going to win their very first game. They are the first expansion team to win their first game in their existence on the road. I don't know if that's a testament to how good Vegas is going to be or how bad the Dallas Stars have been out of the gate. We always thought this offseason that a lot of their problems were fixed, that they were going to look like the Central Division champions that they were from 2 years ago. You would expect a healthy Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn to really just carry this team, plus the additions of wonder goaltender Ben Bishop and a right winger from Russia, Alex Radulov, that they would be better out of the gate. But we haven't seen that yet. But like I like to say, it's an 82-game season. We expect things to change, hopefully, for them. Another surprise is the Colorado Avalanche, coming off the worst record in NHL history last year. I think they were 20 points clear of any other team for the most losingest record of the season. To come out of the gate and be 4-1. They took some risks with some signings that they made, one of them being Nail Yakupov, former first overall pick in the 2012 draft, out of Russia. He played for Edmonton, had a decent year in the lockout season, the shorted lockout season, and then kind of tanked after that and wasn't what you would expect out of a first overall pick. Certainly not even like a third round pick. Went to St. Louis for virtually nothing. Did nothing there. Now he's in Colorado, and he's got 6 points in 5 games. He has more points than Connor McDavid does for the Oilers. So you got to wonder, did they keep the best first overall pick? My answer is yes, but I think it's just an interesting start to see how he has more points already this season than he did all of last year. So Colorado might be a team that we're looking at, who also isn't that far away from success. So maybe last year was just a terrible fluke. I don't know. We're also seeing the resurgence of Toronto. Their young guys are really starting to make a difference. New Jersey is starting to make a difference here. It hasn't really been a lot to Nico Hischier's credit, but for the team that's rallying around him, and they really expect a lot of great things from their first overall pick. St. Louis. Your St. Louis Blues, Ben, if I might say.
My St. Louis Blues, yes.
have gone to an incredible start, but I don't think we could really expect anything else from them. Tarasenko has been great. Edmondson has been great. Pietrangelo has been great.
Shen has been really great as well.
Braden Shen, who I think was a steal before the trade, before the draft. Getting Braden Shen, I think, is a wonderful addition. But I think the two teams that stick out to me the most are Edmonton and Anaheim, and how we have not been good. I always thought that there wasn't much to worry about. And I did just say it's an 82-game season, and the Ducks have never been good out of the gate. But those first games look promising, and now we're still going to have to do it without Getzlaf. We're still going to have to do it without Eves. They both came back for one game, only to go back onto the injured reserve. We're still missing like 6 or 7 guys, so I hope that this isn't a sign of what's to come for Anaheim's case, and then certainly not Edmonton. When you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, 2 of the biggest stars in the game right now, not performing, I don't think that's a good sign.
Definitely. Thank you for your thoughts, Matt. It's been a very exciting hockey season so far. This is, for me, and you guys know this, I'm trying to become more of a hockey fan, and what hockey has shown me, it's not only... That 82-game season is brutal. Like, these guys are going through similar, if not more, physical strife than NFL players are, yet 82 games is a lot, and so these guys are undoubtedly some of the greatest athletes I've seen in the world, and it's also an incredibly exciting sport to watch because it can be unpredictable, and we've really seen that in the first week of the hockey season. So... we're starting to run out of time here today on the Comeback Kid. Thank you all for being with us once again. We would like to transition now to our ongoing segment that all of us thoroughly enjoy. We will now let you know this week who rides the bus. This week on Ride the Bus, we have a certain subject who is close to Matt's heart. His name is Miguel Cabrera. Matt, could you explain to the listener exactly why he is riding the bus this week?
Miggy, you're riding the bus this week because you might have to fork out $100,000 a month for child support. Now, that is an exuberant amount of money to raise 2 kids. I mean, these allegations are coming out against you because of someone out of Florida. Like, when was the last time you were in Florida, dude? Anyways, you have a family now. This is not something you want to be seen on the news. That one of these star players in the game, deterring as he is now going to have to potentially pay from what was used to be $6,200 a month to now $100,000 a month in child support. That is $1.2 million a year. 100,000 times 12, 1.2. Who needs that money to raise 2 kids? I mean, was the parent now used to a lavish lifestyle? I don't know, but whatever the situation is, this isn't something that you should be dealing with, Miggy. You need to be more careful. Control what you can control. But most importantly,
ride the bus. Miggy, I think that the prophetic words of Kanye West really hold true in this circumstance. We want prenup. We want prenup. Yeah. That's all I have to say. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to this week of this episode of The Comeback Kid. We all appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to give us a listen. So now we're going to transition to what we're looking forward to this upcoming week. So yeah, we actually didn't have enough time to touch on it on this topic this episode, even though it's right on the horizon, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it a lot next week. But NBA tip-off is tomorrow night. The Celtics and Cavs, a.k.a. the Kyrie Irving Bowl, is going to be taking place tomorrow night. The opening day of the NBA season after a crazy offseason. You guys will agree there was a ton of movement. The Timberwolves got better. Pretty much the entire West got exponentially better, with the East just... everyone was just migrating west, like from the East to the West this year. So it'll be interesting to see how the NBA season starts. the Cavs might be without LeBron James in the opening day of the season. He aggravated an injury during his final preseason game of the preseason, so it'll be interesting to see moving forward. And then in tandem to the Celtics and Cavs game, there is also Golden State against a revamped Houston team who acquired Chris Paul in the offseason. So it's going to be interesting to see if teams who have strengthened themselves in the West will now be able to contend with the mighty Golden State Warriors.
Well, what I'm going to be watching this Saturday, number 19 Michigan, my Michigan Wolverines, travel to Happy Valley, Pennsylvania to take on the number 2 ranked Penn State Nittany Lions. Should be a great game. Michigan trying to get some revenge from... Well, last year, Michigan beat Penn State, but then Penn State ended up finishing higher than Michigan at the end of the season, so Penn State ended up going to the Rose Bowl. Michigan went to the Orange Bowl. So this has become kind of a budding rivalry over the last couple of years, and it's going to be a great game. Can't wait. Go Blue.
For me, it's going to have to be this Friday night, Ducks versus Canadians. 2 struggling teams out of the gate, but the reason why I'm excited for it is that I'm going to be there.
Right on, Matt. So that's it for us today here on the Comeback Kid, because Matt and I really need to get to class. We have class that starts in, 15 minutes? Yeah, so we need to run to the other side of campus and get to that. So, with that being said, you guys can listen to the Comeback Kid in a variety of different ways. Check us out at USD Comeback on Twitter and Facebook, or search The Comeback Kid and give us a listen on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/ComebackKidUSD. And for those of you listening on Facebook, Twitter, or SoundCloud, we broadcast live every single week at 9 a.m. on USD radio station, which can be found on the TuneIn radio app. TuneIn is available on both Apple and Android app stores. Once you download the app, just search USD Radio, favorite that page, and you'll have access to USD Radio wherever you go. And that's it from us, guys. We have 4.5 years to mourn the loss of the United States national team, but I look forward to just going through that with you guys. So have a great day and a great week, everyone. We'll see you next week at 9 a.m.